Racist cop KCK's pregnant black woman, her husband, who is a veteran soldier, have fought war in over 10 countries. His revenge will shock you. The soldiers surrounded him, their faces like stone. One of them stepped forward, holding out a phone. Confess. Publicly. Or this continues. Billy shook his head, clinging to his pride. No, you can't make me. But when justice stands firm, even the mightiest fall. This is a story of unshakable resolve, poetic justice, and the triumph of love and resilience. Stay tuned, subscribe, like, share, and engage. You don't want to miss this powerful tale. The soft hum of the air conditioner filled the cozy living room as Kate Jones adjusted her maternity gown in front of the mirror. Does this make me look too puffy? She asked, turning to her husband, Major Elijah Jones, who was sprawled comfortably on the couch, flipping through a parenting book titled Twins, Double the Joy, Double the Trouble. Elijah peeked over the book's edge, raising an eyebrow. Puffy, you look like the commander-in-chief of baby protection, ready to conquer all potential dangers with your mom radar. That outfit screams, don't mess with my babies. Kate burst into laughter, her hands cradling her round belly. Oh, come on. I'm just trying to be comfortable while looking presentable. These little ones are already a handful, and they haven't even been born yet. Well, you're definitely winning the style game, General of Baby Security. Elijah teased, closing the book and walking over to her. He gently kissed her forehead. You look beautiful. And no matter what, our twins are lucky to have a mom who puts so much thought into everything. Kate smiled warmly, brushing away a tear that threatened to spill. You're lucky I love you, soldier. Otherwise, I have you running 10 laps for that puffy comment. 10 laps. Ma'am, I just got out of combat. Elijah mock saluted her, causing them both to erupt in laughter. As the giggles subsided, Elijah knelt down and rested his hand on her belly. All right, team, he said, addressing the twins. Listen up. One of you is going to be an astronaut, the other a doctor. No arguments, no debates. The Jones legacy demands excellence. Kate rolled her eyes, playfully swatting his shoulder. You're already assigning careers. What if one of them wants to be an artist or a chef? Fine, fine. Astronaut chef and doctor artist. Elijah quipped, standing up and feigning deep contemplation. But they still have to follow the chain of command. I am, after all, their Major Dad. Major Dad. Kate doubled over in laughter. You're impossible, you know that. That's why you married me. He shot back with a wink. Later that afternoon, Kate eased herself onto the plush recliner while Elijah packed a picnic basket. She watched him with amusement as he meticulously sorted through items on the dining table. Hand sanitizer. Check. Snacks. Check. First aid kit. Double check, he muttered to himself. Elijah, we're going to a park, not a battlefield, Kate teased, sipping her glass of water. Preparation is key, Kate. You don't go into unknown territory without a plan, he replied, stuffing a folded blanket into the basket. Plus, you're carrying 2 VIPs. We can't take any chances. Are we bringing a parachute too? Kate joked, shaking her head. I appreciate the effort, but you're going to scare people with that military precision. Scare people? I'm the guy who's keeping us safe. Don't pretend you weren't impressed when I color-coded the baby supplies last week. Kate smirked. Impressed? Sure. But mostly, I just realized how deeply you've fallen into the parent trap. Elijah chuckled, grabbing the basket. Okay, General. The chariot awaits. Let's get some fresh air before you accuse me of being too cautious. Kate hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. Are you sure it's safe? I mean, with everything we've been through. Elijah knelt beside her, taking her hand. Kate, I know the past was tough, but this is our moment. We deserve a little happiness, a little normalcy, and you're not going anywhere without me by your side. Her lips curved into a grateful smile. All right, soldier, let's do this. As they headed to the door, Elijah added one last item to his pocket, a small portable GPS tracker. Kate noticed and raised an eyebrow. Really? A tracker? Hey, you never know, he said with a playful shrug. You're my mission, Kate, and I always complete my missions. As the door closed behind them, the warm glow of the evening sun bathed the street. Their laughter lingered in the air, but beneath it was a silent, unspoken vigilance, a shared awareness of the precious lives they were protecting and the unpredictable world waiting beyond their doorstep. The park was alive with the colors of the sunset, the lake reflecting golden ripples as birds glided across its surface. Kate sighed contentedly, her hand resting gently on her belly. This is perfect, Elijah. Just what I needed. Major Jones smiled, spreading the blanket on the bench before helping Kate settle into place. See, sometimes your soldier husband has good ideas, he teased, crouching to tuck a small pillow behind her back. Comfy enough for the general. Kate chuckled. Comfy enough, but you're still on diaper duty when we get home. As they laughed, their moment was interrupted by a shadow looming over them. A stocky man in a police uniform stood nearby, his presence breaking the peaceful atmosphere. His name tag read Billy, and his expression was a mix of arrogance and disdain. "Ma'am," Officer Billy barked, his voice sharp. "I need to see your identification." Kate looked up, startled but composed. "I'm sorry, officer. Is there a problem?" "Don't ask questions. Just show me your ID," Billy snapped. Elijah stood, his height making him tower over Billy. His voice was calm but firm. "Officer, with all due respect, my wife is pregnant and seated. Is there a specific reason for this request?" Billy sneered, ignoring Elijah. His eyes narrowed on Kate. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Let me see your ID." Kate exchanged a glance with Elijah, sensing the tension building. "I don't understand, officer. I haven't done anything wrong. We're just enjoying the park." Billy took a step closer, his hand twitching toward his belt. "You don't need to understand. You just need to comply." Elijah's hands clenched into fists at his sides, but his tone remained measured. "She's explained herself. If you don't have a reason." Billy cut him off with a cold laugh. "Pipe down, soldier boy. You don't run things here." Kate placed a hand on Elijah's arm, silently urging him to stay calm. Her voice was steady but respectful. "Officer, I really don't see why you're doing this. We're just here for a quiet evening." Billy's face twisted with frustration. Without warning, he grabbed Kate's arm, pulling her roughly. "You're refusing the lawful order. That's obstruction." Kate gasped, struggling to keep her balance as Elijah stepped forward in a flash. "Let go of her." "Now," he said, his voice low and deadly serious. Billy turned to face him, puffing out his chest. "Or what? What are you gonna do, tough guy?" Kate, her arms still gripped tightly, intervened. "Elijah, please. I'm fine. Don't." Reluctantly, Elijah stepped back, his eyes burning with barely controlled anger. "You're out of line, officer." Billy smirked. "Out of line? I'll show you out of line." With no provocation, he lashed out with his boot, striking Kate's pelvic area. She cried out in pain, collapsing onto the concrete bench as tears streamed down her face. The sound of the twins' startled cries from inside her belly echoed in Kate's ears as she cradled her stomach. Elijah was at her side in an instant, his hands shaking as he checked her. Kate, talk to me. Are you okay?" Kate winced, trying to catch her breath. I'm okay. I think the babies are okay." Billy stood over them, sneering. "Maybe next time you'll learn to cooperate." Elijah's face was unreadable as he lifted Kate gently into his arms. His voice was calm, almost eerily so. "You're done here, officer." Billy smirked, brushing imaginary dust off his uniform. "You people need to learn some respect." He spat before turning and swaggering away. The crowd, which had silently watched the entire ordeal, began to murmur among themselves. but no one stepped forward to help. The air was heavy with tension and disbelief. Elijah carried Kate toward the car, his grip steady yet protective. As he settled her in the passenger seat, she looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Elijah, don't do anything reckless. Please." He kissed her forehead softly, his voice a whisper filled with promise. "He'll never do this to anyone else again." As they drove away, the sunset seemed less golden, the once beautiful park now tainted by the bitter stain of injustice. Elijah's mind, however, was already working. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The night was quiet, but Major Jones couldn't rest. The image of Kate wincing in pain and clutching her belly was burned into his mind. He sat at the dining table, his fingers drumming against the wooden surface. His jaw was set, his expression cold and determined. Finally, he reached for his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. "Jones? That you?" A gruff voice answered on the other end. "It's me, Captain." His tone was low and measured. "I need the team. This isn't military business. It's personal." The captain paused, then chuckled. "You've got my attention. What's the mission?" Jones explained everything, his voice tight with restrained anger. By the time he finished, there was no humor left in the captain's voice. "That's low, even for someone like him." "It's not just about him," Jones said. "It's about setting a precedent. People like Billy think they're untouchable. He needs to learn, know, feel what consequences mean." The captain's agreement was swift. "We'll be there by morning. This isn't a mission. It's a lesson." By dawn, the plan was in motion. Billy, oblivious to the storm brewing, sauntered into the precinct with his usual cocky swagger. He waved lazily at a few colleagues and plopped into his chair, oblivious to the growing whispers among the staff. A loud, deliberate knock echoed through the precinct. The receptionist, wide-eyed, froze in place. Slowly, she stood and peeked outside, her face draining of color. "Officer Billy," she called, her voice trembling. "You have visitors." Billy smirked and strolled toward the door, brushing past her. "What's the big deal? Tell them to wait." But as he opened the door, his smugness evaporated. Standing in formation were nearly 24 soldiers, their uniforms immaculate, their expressions grim. At their helms stood Major Jones, his eyes locked on Billy. Billy's voice cracked. What is this?" Jones stepped forward, his tone as icy as the morning air. "We're here for you." Billy tried to laugh it off, but his voice shook. "You can't do this. I'm an officer of the law." Jones didn't flinch. "You're a disgrace to the uniform, and now you're going to learn what it means to earn respect." The soldiers moved as one, flanking Billy and separating him from the others in the precinct. His protests grew louder as they led him into the yard, but no one intervened. His colleagues watched in stunned silence, unsure whether to help or stay out of the way. Billy stumbled into the center of the yard, sweat already forming on his brow. Jones stepped forward, his voice carrying authority that silenced any thoughts of resistance. "You're going to complete these exercises, or we'll keep going until you do." Frog jumps. Now, Billy's mouth opened to protest, but 2 soldiers stepped forward, their stares daring him to refuse. Reluctantly, he crouched and jumped, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. His breath came in short gasps after only a few jumps, and his face turned red. "Keep going," Jones ordered. "I didn't say stop." Billy wheezed, his legs trembling as he continued. After a few more jumps, he collapsed to his knees. "I can't do this." Jones crossed his arms. "You'll find the strength. Next position. Freeze." Billy was hauled to his feet and handed 2 bricks. "Hold them out," a soldier instructed. Billy's arms shook violently as he extended them, the weight of the bricks and the strain on his muscles quickly becoming unbearable. Sweat poured down his face, and he let out a small whimper. Jones stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is nothing compared to what you did to my wife." You caused her pain. You endangered my children. And now you're feeling just a fraction of that." Billy's arms gave out, and the bricks fell to the ground. He looked up, his face desperate. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "Stand on one leg," Jones interrupted. Billy, his injured leg throbbing, tried to comply. He wobbled unsteadily, his arms flailing as he tried to keep his balance. Each second felt like an eternity as he fought against the pain and exhaustion. Finally, he collapsed again, gasping for air. The soldiers surrounded him, their faces like stone. One of them stepped forward and held out a phone. "Confess, publicly, or this continues." Billy shook his head, his pride still holding on. "No, you can't make me." Jones knelt beside him, his voice low and dangerous. "This is nothing compared to what the world will do to you once they know the truth. You can either speak now, or we'll make sure you're the most disciplined man in prison." Billy's resolve broke. His hands trembled as he took the phone, and the live stream began. His voice, cracking and weak, spilled the truth for the world to hear. Jones watched silently, satisfied but not triumphant. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. When it was over, Jones stood and looked down at Billy. This was a lesson. Learn it well. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Billy to face the consequences of his own actions. Billy's trembling face filled the screen, the live broadcast reaching hundreds of thousands. His voice cracked with every word as he confessed to years of misconduct. He detailed his history of abusing power, targeting vulnerable communities, and taking bribes to cover up his actions. Each word was a nail in the coffin of his career, and as he spoke, his arrogant demeanor from the park was nowhere to be seen. His audience wasn't just the public. It was his peers, his family, and the very institution he claimed to serve. The broadcast ended in silence. Moments later, police officers arrived at the precinct, not for duty, but for Billy. As they led him out in handcuffs, his colleagues looked away, their expressions a mixture of anger and disgust. The arrest was swift, and within days, Billy faced trial. The judge, unimpressed by his belated confession, handed down a sentence that reverberated through the courtroom. 1 year of imprisonment with no bail. The term included mandatory military-style training aimed at reforming his behavior. Upon release, he would be stripped of his rank and demoted. Justice was served, but the real punishment, as Major Jones had intended, was the humiliation of being held accountable. Weeks later, the tension that had gripped the Jones family finally eased. The soft cries of newborns filled the hospital room as Kate, radiant despite her exhaustion, cradled her twins. Major Jones sat beside her, his large hands dwarfing the tiny fingers of his baby boy. "They're perfect," Kate whispered, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. "After everything, we made it." Jones kissed her forehead, his voice thick with emotion. "Victor," he said, gently stroking the boy's cheek, "because he's our victory after all we've been through." Kate smiled, shifting her gaze to their daughter. "And Grace, for the grace that carried us through." Victor and Grace, names that carried meaning and a legacy of strength, resilience, and love. As the family of four rested together, the weight of their past struggles gave way to a new chapter of hope. A month later, their home buzzed with warmth and laughter as friends, family, and members of Jones' battalion gathered for a Thanksgiving celebration. The dining table was filled with an array of dishes, and the atmosphere was alive with chatter. At the center of it all sat Kate, glowing with happiness, and Major Jones, ever watchful of his family. When the time came for a toast, Jones stood, raising his glass. The room quieted, every eye on him. "I've spent my life serving my country, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. But this year taught me what true service means. It's about standing up, not just for the ones you love, but for what's right. It's about making sure no one, is left vulnerable to injustice. Tonight, we celebrate more than the birth of our twins or justice being served. We celebrate the power of resilience, unity, and the courage to fight for what matters. Applause erupted, and tears glistened in many eyes as Jones sat back down, taking Kate's hand in his. The celebration continued well into the evening, becoming more than just a party. It transformed into a rallying cry, with guests vowing to advocate for change and fairness in their own lives and communities. As the last guests departed, the house fell into a peaceful stillness. In the nursery, Victor and Grace slept soundly, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Kate and Jones stood by their cribs, their hands entwined. "They're safe," Kate said softly, her voice tinged with gratitude and relief. "You kept us safe. You kept them safe." Jones looked at her, his expression tender but resolute. "And I always will," he replied, his voice carrying the weight of a promise he intended to keep. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of their children's dreams, the Jones family found not just closure, but a beginning, a future built on love, strength, and an unyielding commitment to protect what truly mattered. Thank you for staying with us through this incredible story. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us. Before you go, make sure to hit subscribe and let us know in the comments your thought and where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Your support inspires us to create more meaningful stories, and we can't wait to share the next related series with you. See you soon.